Right, well, let's make a start, as we do only have 20 minutes, and if I have managed to restore everything, I've got quite a lot I'd like to get through. But let me introduce myself first. I'm really pleased to join you. Apologies for the English, as I say. So my name is James Dales, and I'm a director at Altius or Avanade. We're having an identity crisis at the moment. I worked for Altius for about 10 years, and we've recently been acquired by Avanade. So I should really start saying I'm a director at Avanade from now on. I'm a Microsoft MVP and also one of the co-leaders of the London Power BI user group. But I guess most relevant to this session is about 4 years ago, I created a custom visual called Icon Map, which I've continued and I'm continuing to develop. And that's what I'm going to give you an overview of over the next 20 minutes. So Icon Map is a map visual for Power BI. So I guess the question is, when there's already 5 map visuals available for Power BI, why do we need a custom visual? Well, let me just very quickly give you my view of the existing map visuals for Power BI, and hopefully that will explain why we need custom visuals. So these are the 5 map visuals available. We have the filled map, which is a choropleth map for Power BI. That means that it will display colored in shapes on the map, usually counties or American states or postcode areas. But the problem with the filled map is that you have to use the built-in geographies or built-in boundaries that it understands. And outside of America, these are very limited, which makes it pretty much useless for any country outside of the United States. The shape map, however, does help to address that in that you can upload your own boundary files, but it will only display those boundaries. There's no background map behind. You can't see the underlying streets or countries. It will only show what you're displaying. And it also doesn't support drill down. So you can't go, for example, from country to state to postcode area within that same visual. The map visual, I guess, is your go-to map where you want to draw circles on the map. And for many purposes, it's quite good. It has quite good geocoding so that it will understand if you put in a postcode, I don't know about in Denmark, but in the UK, it usually gets those right. But it's limited. It will only display 3,500 of those circles on the map at any one time. And it's reliant on quite an old Bing Maps API, which doesn't perform very well, frankly. And then there's ArcGIS Maps, which is from Esri, who are a dedicated mapping company. And as a result, as you would expect, it's a much more capable visual. But it does feel like it has been developed by a third party. It doesn't really follow the rules of normal Power BI visuals, and it still doesn't support some of those key standard capabilities that Power BI visuals do, like drill down. And I think really to get the most from it, you need a paid ArcGIS enterprise subscription. And then there's the newcomer that arrived only a couple of months ago, which is Azure Maps. So Azure Maps, I think, looks really promising. There's lots of capabilities being promised in the roadmap, but at the moment it's very much a version 1 visual and is still therefore quite limited. So there's lots of custom visuals available in the store already. I'm not going to talk through all of these. I'm quite pleased to see some new ones arriving in the last month or so. You'll note that there's Icon Map available in the App Store. However, that's not the visual that I'm talking about. I'm talking about Icon Map version 2, which is still in beta, and therefore you can only get the visual that I'm going to demo now by going to www.iconmap.com. It's not the same version as in the store. That's a very old version. I'll talk about the roadmap to getting it into the App Store a little bit later. So I could go through this in PowerPoint, but actually let's jump straight into Power BI Desktop, and I'll talk you through the features inside Power BI. So let me open up Power BI, and I've just loaded in some crime data just to give me something to some data to demonstrate. The data is not too important. So I've added Icon Map already. let me pull in a couple of fields. As with all visuals, you need to add some fields onto the visual before it will display anything. So I'm just going to add on London boroughs. They're the areas in London, and let's pull in number of crimes. Where's that crime count? That'll do. And I'm going to pull that into size, and that's enough to give us a base map. So obviously, before you start plotting anything on the map, you want to understand what map background you want to plot those objects onto. And icon map gives us quite a good choice of background layers out of the box. We've got a selection from OpenStreetMap. I'm not going to run through all of these, but we've got the standard map, which gives you, quite good street level data all the way down to individual buildings. There's also a nice black and white or grey version of that. Probably a couple of others worth pointing out. We've got Open Topo Map, which is a bit horrible at this level of detail, but if you zoom right in and you want contours to understand the gradient and terrain, then that's quite a good choice. There's also these stamen layers, which again I won't run through, but it's probably worth pointing out tone of light. If you want to do a choropleth or heat map, this black and white map's quite a nice background layer to use as a basis. And then you'll notice that we've got these Mapbox and Thunderforest options. So in order to use those, you need to have either a Mapbox or a Thunderforest API key. And for small usage or for development purposes, those are both free. So you can either go to thunderforest.com or mapbox.com. I'm going to add in a Mapbox API key, and I just paste that into that field there, and then that will allow me to select these Mapbox layers. So these are the same layers as you get the choice if you use the Mapbox custom visual as well. Again, I'm not going to go through them all, but the satellite mapping is quite nice if you need satellite background, or I quite like these Mapbox light grey backgrounds. There's also the option for adding a custom URI. So if you've got your own on-premises map server, or you've got an Esri, internal ArcGIS server, or you want to use something like Mapbox Studio to create your own custom colored version of maps, then you can use this custom URI to use your own background map layers in there. There's also this option of, once you've chosen your background layer, to add some additional transparent layers on top of that. So the first of these is the daylight terminator. And if I turn that on and zoom right out, it's a bit interesting at this time of year. We get this nice U curve in the summer. It's much more of an upside down U shape. And this shows obviously where it's nighttime or daytime. And this is live, it updates every single second. So if I zoom in on the map far enough, you'll see it, let's go in a bit further, you'll see it moving across the map and updating every second. So if you've got a real-time map or real-time report, I know I use this for a aircraft engine manufacturer to show the location of all the planes in flight, and it's quite important for them to understand where it's night and day. So that's quite a nice feature for that. If you're working shipping and you're plotting the locations of boats on the map, then OpenStreetMap, OpenSeaMap is quite a useful layer. So if I zoom in far enough on the map, let's go down here, you'll see that it includes all of the nautical information, such as shipping lanes and buoys and lighthouses, that kind of information. And then if you're working on infrastructure on land and on railways, the Open Rail Map layers, let those load in, show all of the railway networks all around the world, and you can go into some quite interesting levels of detail. It goes all the way down to individual signals and points and sidings. So I know that's been used by some of our rail infrastructure customers in the UK. And then similarly to Mapbox and Thunderforest, if you go to openweathermap.org, you can sign up for a OpenWeatherMap API key. And if I paste that into the OpenWeatherMap API key, we can also add on some live weather layers in there as well. So if I turn on the precipitation or rain and zoom out, we should be able to, you're having a nice dry day in Denmark, but the French aren't so lucky. We can see where it's raining, and there's different layers for precipitation, for wind, and for cloud in there as well. And then the final feature that's worth pointing out while we're talking about background layers, because this is another feature that's not interactive on the map, is something called a WMS layer. So WMS layer is an open mapping platform. It's very popular in the public sector, and we support WMS tiles with Icon Map. So let me just show you an example of that. So I'm going to paste in the URL of the server. This is an open server from one of the UK government departments, and I'm going to show deprivation. So I'm pulling in the deprivation layer, and then you'll see that it's overlaid a map of deprivation in the UK as a layer of different coloured shapes which represent how deprived each of those areas is. And I can change the opacity of that, so you can either have it as a faded out, barely visible layer behind some more other data that you're going to plot on the map, or I can change it to be completely opaque, and that will replace the background layer entirely. So I've talked quite a lot about backgrounds, but obviously the most important thing you want to plot on the map is actually some objects. And of course, Icon Map, like most maps, will happily plot some circles for you. But most of the map visuals will plot circles, and I'm not going to demo that particularly. But it's probably worth mentioning that Icon Map will give you really fine control over those circles. You can start with circles from 1 pixel all the way up to filling the entire screen if you really wanted to. But in addition, you can set the fill color and the outline color independently, and the transparency of both of those. So you can really get some interesting effects on that. Oh, and the width of the circle outline too. But the original reason that Icon Map was created was not to draw circles, it was to draw pictures on the map. So I'm going to replace our circles representing the crime in the different areas of London with a picture of a robber. So let me create a quick measure, and I'm going to call it robber, clearly. And for this demo, I'm just going to hard code a URL there, pointing out to a random picture I found on the internet. Now, looks like I've already created it. That's fine. And I'm going to just drag that through onto the image field here. And my circles have immediately changed into pictures of robbers. Let's make it start a little bit bigger so they're a bit clearer to see. So I can change the min and max sizes, and I can make those relative, or I can use actual pixel sizes if I turn that off. And then perhaps the other thing I might want to do is rotate these images around. Imagine they were aircraft or cars or boats that you were wanting to track assets on the map. You might want them to point in the direction of travel. Well, I've also created a measure called rotation, which for now is just going to give us a random number. If I drag that on to the map into the rotation field, where's it gone? Down here. You can see that all of our robbers are now pointing in random directions. So that's quite a nice feature for asset tracking. Not so useful probably for measuring crime, but as I say, the data set behind is not that important. Now, the pictures can either exist as external assets, or they can be stored as 64-bit encoded images within the data model. So I think I've got a TARDIS here, where it's 64-bit encoded and therefore stored within the Power BI file. You can either hard code it in the DAX measure, or you can load it in as data, and obviously you can have a different image for every point if you like. So if I swapped out that robber image and swapped it with TARDIS, we've now got an image which isn't going external to our Power BI report at all. Icon Map can also draw lines. You they can either be straight or follow the curvature of the Earth, and you can change the thickness of those lines. But I'm not going to demonstrate that. I'm going to very quickly instead show how we can create a choropleth map. So let me pull in. I'm going to